Good morning and welcome to Good News WKNI TV 25, our first live program coming back in from the holidays. We took off on the 16th. Mike, I'll tell you, well, you know we didn't take off a lot because you saw us around.
I did.
But Teresa and I tried to take off, the holidays. It's usually our only time that we can get off and do something together. So.
Well, it's a new year, it's cold.
Yeah, boy, it's cold outside. Teresa sat there and turned the heat off in here the other day, and I said, you don't want to turn the heat off. And she goes, well, it's warm outside. I go, you leave the heat on. I go, trust me on this. She was real grateful when she came in here this morning. Yeah.
Well, my girls, I keep it fairly warm in the house anyway because they're all pretty cold-natured. But this morning I was having to push it up a little bit too. They were not wanting to come out of the covers until I put the heat up a little more. So
Little Man and Dee Dee, our little puppies, they had nothing to do. I had to wear that jacket today because they would not surrender my heavy jacket. They were under it. They were wrapped in it. It's got the quilt and everything in it. I kept fighting with them. I said, forget it.
It's a good time to remind everybody. Last night it was pretty cold, but for the next 2 nights, at least 2 nights, if not 3, it's going to be just frigid cold. Do not forget your animals. We've got cats and dogs, and we've already taken care of our cats, and we'll take care of our dog this afternoon, but don't leave them off the list of check. Aside from your pipes and all the other things everybody's used to doing, make sure you check your animals.
Make sure you got radiator or antifreeze in the radiator because you'll be really upset.
Yeah.
I was talking about that on the newscast earlier that a lot of the home do-it-yourself places like Marvin's and all that, I don't know here locally here, we'll make some calls later on today, but they're out of all that insulation foam.
Right.
I heard that on another newscast.
Now, some of that's because of deer stands. Those are excellent on ladder stands to keep your gun from clinging when it hits the metal in the stands.
All right, you hunters, you're going to cause people a bunch of pipes to pop.
So I'm aware of that. I worked at a few stands this past weekend.
Well, if you need any, go out to the hunting stands and go get it. But, and also the elderly. If there's anybody out there that you know of that may not have heat or can't get their heat turned on, let somebody know.
Especially this week. It is going to be well below, it's going to stay below freezing, I think, for about 64 hours or so.
About 3 days.
Yeah. That's
but
unusual.
we need that. And I hate to say that we need it, but we do. If you noticed over the past several years, fleas have been infested all over if you got pets. And this killed actually the eggs and the flea larvae and a lot of insects, so mosquitoes and things like that kind of get.
Well, and I'm one of those people that actually kind of likes colder weather because I'm hot-natured, so it doesn't bother me as much. But now I can't say that around my girls at home because they're not at all. They don't like it a bit.
Hello and welcome back once again to Good News Covington County, and we have Representative Mike Jones here, Jr. And I got to remember to throw Junior in there because Dad, he's still around, so we got to make sure we give him the credit.
He's more than just around. He's
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm going to be careful because your mom gets cross-eyed with me if I start picking on your dad.
And they're both fine. They, these days they're taking some trips. They're fixing to go on a trip together, and they're really enjoying life.
They need to. Yeah. They really have. They've worked hard. Nothing you all have over there at ADC and your family, you didn't work for it. I mean, y'all did work for it.
Well, it's been a family business since my grandfather started it many years ago, many decades ago. And if you come up in our family, you come up, at some point you're driving trucks, you're pulling orders. That's just part of the family. And I did this. I was no different. And it's made us who we are. I mean, that work ethic came natural. That's all we knew.
Well, you got some great folks in your family as well. Mike, we've got some serious issues coming up this year, and there's a lot of chatter in the background as we're talking about some of the underlying things that have been going on. We're hearing the governor saying that he's going to get involved in this and stop that, and he's waiting for the legislature to sit so that way he can start influence some of the things that y'all have got coming before you. One of the biggest questions I have, and I know you've got a lot right there to talk about, but right now we're 6 days into the Affordable Health Care Act. Okay, and I want Affordable Health Care Act because I don't know anybody that can afford it.
I've heard nothing but complaints.
Wow.
And that's what I was saying off camera is the issue that I hear the most about, that I'm asked the most about, that I hear the most complaints about is the Affordable Health Care Act. And part of it is I think a lot of people presumed it was free. And so they thought when they were going to sign up, they were going to get free health care. And it's anything but that. I don't know about you, but most everybody I know, including our plan, has gone up dramatically in price. And so even
We doubled.
Yeah. I mean, it's frightening to see how much some of the plans have gone up. I've had more than one. It's almost to the point where it's almost like forcing people to consider the Affordable Care Plan as an option. But when you go check it, it's not a whole lot less than some of these other plans. The biggest problem that I've seen with it is it's because it is a universal plan. As a man, we don't typically need maternity care.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things in it that if we were negotiating our own plan and we had the benefit to negotiate our own plan, then we could reduce some of the premiums because of things we don't need. And so that's the benefit of letting the market and working with these different companies and negotiating your own plan. But because this new law forces a universal plan with all these great things in it, supposedly, it lifts everybody's price up to a higher level. And so the biggest group that's benefited from this has been the insurance providers. They're making...
That's the whole thing, is the worst place for it to benefit is the ones that are benefiting.
The most common misused term to reference all this is that it's health care reform. It's not. It's insurance reform. That's what it really is. And that's the only thing it really impacts. Some people said that they couldn't get coverage before. Well, and I think the biggest issue is the pre-existing problem clause. The reason why that ends up not being as helpful as the federal government thought it would be is they were counting on younger people between the ages of 22 and 35 to be the people that were the ones who basically were generating the revenue for the plan. Well, if I'm a 25-year-old and I find out that I'm healthy, I don't really have to go to the doctor hardly ever because I'm doing pretty good because of my age, that I don't have to spend that money on health care, because if I ever have a problem, now with this law, I can go get health care after I have my problem, and they can't turn me down. They have to take me on then. So why spend money ahead of time on any health care until I get to the age and the time in life when I really have a problem, so I can save all that money and go get a new car, or I can save all that money and go put it into something else, or do whatever you want to do, but you won't be spending it on your health. And so the revenue, the money, is not going into that plan like they expected, because that's why people are not signing up. You don't have to.
Well, some people are under the impression that you have to because of the fines and the penalties and things like that.
I think that's also one of the things we can't wait to see how they make that work.
I'm going to, first off, why the IRS?
Well, I'll tell you one reason. When the plan was created, it was real specific. It's not a tax. It's not a tax.
But if the IRS is the one penalizing it.
And then what happens is the only way the U.S. Supreme Court could uphold the law is they had to say, because it's a tax. That's the only way you can make it constitutional, for the federal government could impose it. And so they redefined it as being a tax. Well, now that they've redefined it as being a tax, there comes the IRS. Now they'll try to use that as the way. When that starts happening, I think that's when the IRS starts supposedly enforcing and fining. I think that's when you're going to really see the public reaction, because that's not going to make a lot of people happy. That's going to upset quite a few people.
Well, we're seeing a lot of that reaction now on social pages, and
Yep.
we're seeing it, when you're walking around the square talking to people, they're infuriated by it. Now, the Obama administration's boasted, well, we got 2 million people signed up on it. I'm like, really? 2 million people out of 200, how many billion?
It's a very low percentage. In
Yeah.
fact, the agent director that was over this, one of the czars that was over this program, I think she said in one of her early speeches that it would take at least 7 million participants before it would be where it could hold its own. Now, I noticed in the media this weekend, they're now downplaying that completely and saying, oh, no, 2 million is great. They're totally getting away from that 7 million number. And that's what I'm getting back to is for a plan like this to work, you have to have enough revenue to
Right.
pay for it. And once again, they took away the motivation for anybody to sign up. So if you're younger and in healthier state of mind, in a body, you really don't have an incentive to get it at all, to get any coverage. Just wait till when you need it.
Well, and that's what a lot of the young folks are doing now. The older folks that like to abide by the laws and behave, and like Teresa and I, we had to take the higher deductible.
Right.
I mean, my deductible is almost $10,000.
And think about that. So if you're having to pay out of pocket $10,000, most people can't do that. I mean, that's just reality. So, and I've heard people say it's $5,000, and I say, well, how much your premium? And they'll say, well, our premium is $650. I said, so really what you're saying is, before you actually get anything covered by Affordable Care Act in that plan, then you're going to have about $10,000 out of your pocket before you'll ever get a dime out of that
Exactly.
plan. Reality is, it's not really the care and the insurance people think it is. If you've got a major catastrophic problem, illness in the hospital, it probably will play in then. But most people, thank goodness, don't have that happen during most of their lives. We have the normal things that take
Right.
place. Well, what that basically means is your coverage is not going to do a dime of good during the majority of your life. It's only in those real bad times, those catastrophic times, that it'll come into issue. And since you don't have to buy it, since the pre-existing clause allows you to get coverage even if you have a problem, once again, why buy it until you need it?
Well, I'm not going to cover or stay on this a whole lot longer, but there's some folks out there that are calling this socialistic medicine. It's not. It's far from socialist medicine. It actually comes under capitalistic when it comes to the insurance companies.
Well, there's no question the insurance companies are benefiting tremendously from this. I can't blame them because they're not the ones who were pushing it. It was obviously the president.
Could a lobbyist have
Well,
an
I mean,
influence
if I were the lobbyist for that company, I would have just stood silent off to the side because it wouldn't take a much math to compute to see that this is going to end up being a windfall tremendously, and it has been, and it will be, because in effect, all these premiums are getting paid, but because these deductibles are so high, there's not much payout until except for those real extreme cases, which are not the majority of your cases. That's the minority of them. So, once again, it's insurance reform. It's not health care reform. We've not touched health care reform. We've just created a insurance monster is what it amounts to.
All right. Now, the reason I'm talking about a federal thing with a state representative is that our governor said we're not going to be a part of this.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what does that really translate into? And I've got a scenario I'm going to give you that I was told, and I haven't gone to the hospital yet to see if it happened
Right.
yet. But when you used to walk into a hospital in the emergency room, there's a big sign, and it said that you will receive treatment no matter what financial situation you're in, okay, and that health care would be given you and you'd be moved to another.
It's referred to as the COBRA Act.
Right. Now they're saying that with the new affordable health care, that sign's gone. If you don't have insurance, they don't have to treat you.
I don't believe that's the case. The COBRA Act has not been is not overridden by this Affordable Care Act. And the COBRA Act is designed for emergency care. And so, for instance, if a woman is going into labor, if there's an emergency where someone's injured and there's a life-threatening or anything issue like that whatsoever, the COBRA Act is designed to say you cannot shut somebody out from that kind of care. You got to take them in, you got to deal with them. We'll worry about things as we're going down the road, but you have to provide that type of emergency care. And that's the purpose of the COBRA Act. However, what's happened in the years since that law went into place, and that's a federal law, is that, frankly, a lot of people were taking advantage of it. And a lot of people would go into the emergency room not for an emergency care issue. They were going into it for basically their normal needs. And there's where the line is being changed. And that is probably going to be touched and affected by the Affordable Care Act. But to some degree, it's not necessarily the wrong thing because that's where you've had a lot of misuse, and the word fraud is going to come into place a lot, and that's what's caused hospitals to be strained financially in a large way is to the level of misuse of that emergency room.
We just lost a hospital here in Covington County last
Florella,
week.
right.
Florella. And again, I know Mizell's been struggling over there for several years. Andalusia seems to be doing okay. But these are hospitals that serve our community, and it's a dangerous situation.
Well, I know in Florella, I don't think anybody saw that coming. The owner of that, my understanding, literally flew in that day, came in, put a handwritten note on the door, and just said in so many hours at the end of the day, you know, have everybody moved out. I think that was very much a surprise to everybody down there. I pretty much can say I know it is, or know it was, to the mayor and to the leadership down there. When they called me, the leadership in Florella, they asked me whether or not the certificate of need status, and that's what you have to have, that a certificate of need document to have an open hospital. They asked me if there was a grace period, and we made some calls. We found out that there is a 12-month grace period, and so there's a lot of talking going on, a lot of negotiating going on behind the scenes to see what can be done and to see what the options are, and those are ongoing. In fact, some of them are even today. So that's a work in progress, and that'll continue to be
I
addressed.
can't imagine that being closed. I mean, it's just the only facility within 30 minutes of that location.
Well, and once again, that emergency room is probably the thing that they worry about the most down there for obvious reasons. And so I think, once again, I know they're doing a lot of talking. I know that there's been a good bit going on since the very day it occurred. I know every time I'm called by leadership in Florella, we've been very quick to get them an answer back on whatever they needed, and that won't change. We'll continue to help them any way we can.
All right, the original question I started out with, the governor said we're not taking part of it. What does that actually translate into on the affordable health care?
There's two issues the governor's looking at. The one issue, and we addressed this some in last session, is that, and we're not the only state, this is something that's true everywhere, tremendous amount of fraud that's already in some of the Medicaid that's being used at this time. And by fraud, I mean people that clearly should not be receiving it, but they are saying that their financial status is far less than what it really is, and so they're getting Medicaid when they really should have never been getting Medicaid. Well, what that does is it increases the burden on everybody else.
Right.
And so what the governor has said, and I tend to agree with him, is if we don't clean up and fix and try to get rid of some of this fraud while we still have it at the size it is now, then if we add 300,000 more people to the rolls, we'll never get our hands around it. It'll be just so massive we won't be able to touch it. And so his objective has been twofold. One is to try to address the fraud, to try to address the structure of it now with the size that it's at this point. And then once that's completed, and we're, I would say, close to that. We've been working on that for quite a while. I've made had more than one meeting and more than one trip to Montgomery with hospital leadership in this community to address those different issues about which district we fall in, about different questions they may have. And we've been working very closely with Don Williamson. He's the director over the state Medicaid program. So we've been working on that behind the scenes for quite some time. And that's not going to stop. That'll continue for a while. But once you get that part, get your hands around that, where you've got a little bit more control, you're making it more efficient, then you can start looking at the other side of the equation, which is, do we need to expand? Can we afford to expand? The one argument you hear quite a few people talk about, and I've heard Dr. Bronner talk about, is that we would be foolish not to take the billions of free dollars that the federal government wants to give every state to get into the Medicaid program. And what Dr. Bronner always fails to include in his conversation is that on that fourth year, we then have to start paying a percentage of it as a state. Well, if we were a state that had, like Wyoming and some of the other states up north that have found these new huge gas reserves, or Texas with oil wells, if you've got a revenue stream from something like that you can, divert to pay for these kind of things, that's one thing. But when you're in a state that we don't have those type of deposits and those type of assets, our general fund is about $1.67 billion. If we were to take on this program and take on the additional Medicaid, on that fourth year, we would have to come up with somewhere between $250 and $350 million to our general fund. That's 1.67. We can barely afford what we're doing now. And that money, that fund, and the revenue that goes into that general fund is not high growth, fast growth money. It's coming from property taxes. It's coming from fees and fines and things like that. Those are not fast growth. And so for me to say today, sure, let's take these 3 years of it being free, I would be irresponsible and not a good steward if I didn't say, but how are we going to pay for it on that 4th year and then on. And I don't have, if you ask me right now, and I've had many people ask me, I have no idea. We do not have that money to be able to pay for then. So where would it be then? And I don't have a good answer for that, neither does the governor at this point.
So, and I say a lot of folks, there's people out there when the governor said they're not participating in this and they're not going to support the Health Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. It's not saying that we as Alabamians are exempt from the law of having to apply.
Correct. I mean, you can. There's two sides of this. One is the health insurance side, which you can go online now. What we're saying is that Alabama's not creating its own insurance program.
Right.
You have the option. Every state has the option. You can, as a state, you can create your own insurance program, or you can allow the federal government to have its program. In Alabama, we're allowing the federal government to have its program. So the federal government runs the insurance program that you're signing up for now if you're in Alabama. And we're not the only state. There's, I think it was 16 or 17 other states, roughly, that are doing the same thing that we're doing because they're in the same situation we're in. They are looking beyond those first 3 years. And that's one phase. The other phase is the Medicaid, and that's the second side of it. And
so the long term is what we're looking at.
Correct.
And
short term, you can already apply for the insurance now under the federal program.
Right.
That's available now.
It's a mess.
It is a mess.
It's a mess.
When you say that you're creating a law that we'll figure out what it means and read it later after
after it's passed. Yeah.
You know what do you expect? And I've tried to read that law. I got a copy of it from the federal government, and I've tried to read it more times than I can count now. It is a nightmare to even read it, much less understand it.
I got to section 8, I believe it was, and I said, it's beyond everything I can think of.
Well, it's the poorest written bill I've ever seen. There's plenty of examples where it references things that don't exist. Mm-hmm. It references other areas in the law that don't exist.
I didn't know that.
So, and
it's not even enforceable. I mean, this is what we talked about moments ago. Was
right.
about the IRS and the Homeland Security. Okay,
right.
They're going to be the two agencies overseeing this. It's not even a legal law.
Well,
I mean,
the only way it can be. It's been at least portions of it have been determined to be legal by the U.S. Supreme Court is to call it a tax. That is the only way that they can constitutionally enforce it. And so you notice that our federal government refuses to ever use the word tax associated with it. But the only way that it can be legal, and according to the U.S. Supreme Court, is
Congresswoman Roby is livid. I mean, when I talk to her about it, she's like. And she gets colorful, but she's very active as far as trying to get this repealed. And that's the good thing about it being a tax. It can be repealed a lot easier than if it was a law.
Well, and there's an argument that's made routinely about, well, instead of just saying you want to repeal it, why not try to fix it? Well, it's kind of like trying to fix a car that has no engine. Mm-hmm. You can't fix that. You got to just start with something different. And in this case, it's not health care reform. Although it's been referenced that 1,000 times, it's insurance reform. Well, yes, there needed to be some fixes on some insurance issues, no question. But this is not the fix at all. Right. And by fixes, I mean you can say, like with the COBRA Act, emergency care, you could address that by saying that if it's not true emergency care, determined as they come in the door, then turn them around. Right. Yeah. So, if they're there just to get a checkup, and if they're there just to do things that are clearly not emergency care, then you're not obligated by law to take that in.
And I want to repeat this. It's not socialized medicine, and that people get confused because they want to associate socialism with the president and all this other stuff. It has nothing to do with socialism. You've got to get out of the box and understand that this is the insurance companies that are benefiting, not the public, the government, I guess, by support from the insurance companies later on. I'm sure the Democrats are going to have a huge following of insurance company money, you know, to benefit.
I would be very surprised if they did not. I would be very surprised. You know, and this is not the only issue. It is the issue that I do hear the most. I spoke at something during the off season in Montgomery, and I was asked, "What do you hear is the biggest issue in your district?" And the day before, or the week before, I'd spoken with the senior summit one day in that week, and then later in the week, I spoke with a group of college kids and high school seniors out at LBW. And what struck me as being interesting is that ended up being the big issue on both groups, whether you're at the one end of life or at the other end of life. And so it does have a lot of interest for different reasons. It's made a lot of people afraid. For different reasons.
You're afraid of the government. Okay, it puts a fear, and boy, we can go into some things on that. But you know, how do you control people through fear? And that's what I'm beginning to. Not beginning. This is what I'm seeing is that the fear factor is being put in to control the public, the people of the United States. And I don't believe, you know, what's his name, Mike from Canada, the guy that Mike.
So the mayor?
No, Michael, the guy that wears a baseball cap all the time, and wrote books and goes on.
Yes, he's done the documentaries and things. Yeah.
Michael Moore.
Yeah.
Michael Moore. You know,
I can't say I've read his books or watched part of
I
them.
have, and I've aired some of his programs on WKNI. But, you know, he'll be the first one to stand up and say, you all ain't got no idea what, you know, socialized medicine is until you come to Canada or England or Britain, whatever they want to call it. What's the difference between Britain and England?
Depends on who you are.
You know, I was out here at the car show the other day, and I said, well, that person's from England. And she goes, no, I'm from Britain. And I'm like, London, right? She goes, right. And I go, so it's London, England, not London, Britain. No, I'm British. And I'm like, okay. But anyway, let's get away from the Health Care Act.
Okay.
So technically, what we're saying is, because a lot of folks I've talked to, well, we don't have to do it in Alabama, okay, because the governor said we're not accepting it.
No, the insurance part is a separate part.
Right.
And once again, that part is available. It's the federal site, website that you go to. My understanding is that the president has extended some of the sign-up time for people who've made an effort that couldn't get on and that kind of thing.
How do they know that? Because they got your computer bugged.
I wasn't going to say that, but that was my first thought. How can they say
Well,
that?
I'm going to tell you, when me and Teresa were looking it up to get on,
Right.
it's got cookies or whatever it is, and it took me right to the page and I didn't even have to, I was like, you got to be kidding me. They got full control of my computer when I go on there. So they know you've tried to get on.
Well, I think we've discovered they clearly know everybody that's ever hit a button on a computer in the nation. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's like this. We'll find out in the coming years whether or not this is going to work or not.
What about the security? Giving all that information to an unsecure site.
That's another issue that's being debated behind the scenes as we speak at the federal level. I don't see, you know, if you've rushed out a program that has problems and you're rushing fixes, it does stand to reason that they're probably not spending the time on security that they probably should have. And so there is a great concern for that.
So are the Republicans prepared to fight the big coffers of the insurance companies this next election?
You know, I can't speak for the federal members of Congress because I honestly have not asked that question of them. I can say that would make sense. You know, I really don't think you're really fighting the insurance companies. I think they're just simply the beneficiaries of the program.
But they're going to keep the Democrats in office if they can.
You know, the thing that I would worry about is even if you repeal this, is whether or not you can go back down, whether or not the insurance premiums could go back and reduce back to what they were. I don't know the answer to that. That is something that would worry me, is that would have to be on the table as far as how we make all that work if a repeal took place.
Then we go to socialized medicine.
Yeah, I honestly don't think that'll happen. I think that one of the reasons why our health care has historically always been the best in the world is that you have this competitiveness that comes with our country, and our way of doing business is that it drives you know, more research, it drives more solutions, it brings out these different things that we're able to do that other countries just don't have the wherewithal to do. Well, that competition, that's where it comes from, and that's what makes us so strong. And if the moment we get away from that, we lose that drive, we lose that edge, we start making the gains that we've been making as far as in the healthcare arena. And that's the biggest number one fear I have of all of this, is whether or not Affordable Care Act or anything that comes after it will diminish where we stand on the health care.
All right, when's the session?
Session begins January 14th, so it's coming up quick.
Right around the corner.
Yes. We start on that Tuesday. Session is going to be a little more unusual compared to the prior three regular sessions. This one's going to be probably a little faster, is what we're being told. We normally have 2 session days per week, which means that we're actually on the House floor voting on legislation 2 days per week normally. Most weeks will be 3 session days per week in this session, which means that the pace will be much faster. It probably also means that, in my opinion, that there'll be fewer bills passed, which is a good thing. I think it's a side effect that's not a bad thing at all. I don't think you're going to see as many large controversial bills because of the fact this thing's going to go so much faster. I don't think they'll have the time to address the larger, more complicated, controversial bills. Some of them will come up during the session. They always do. During this session, you're going to see things come up, not because there's an expectation of passage, but more because of politics and because it's an election year. And I think you'll see people push some things with no real expectation of getting them through because they'll do it for campaign reasons. That's the politics side of it. That's the part that gets a little annoying. Now, you know me well enough to know I like doing the work. I like having everything prepared.
Get her done.
Get her done. Having a goal, complete it, move to the next thing. That's my mentality. And so what I'm expecting to be a little frustrated during this session, but that's also part of it. Not everybody thinks the same as everybody else, and so that comes with the game. As far as what I do think will happen, I do think you'll see a much more focused year on budgets this year. That's a good thing.
We got a good budget right now. We held to it this past.
Correct. And we've not been in proration now for quite some time. Some of the reforms we put into place are working. People were upset about them when we first put them into place, but we've not had proration since. And so it's hard to argue with that now. It's getting more and more difficult to argue with that. We're seeing growth, and slow growth, and that's healthy growth. The spikes in growth are where you tend to make mistakes. You start budgeting on a spike, and then the next year you don't have that spike. That's when you have those proration problems. So slow, healthy growth is good, and that's what we're seeing. I'm already hearing businesses that are expecting more jobs to come online. They're starting to see enough growth in the economy that there's a call for more production. And so I was talking with some businesses here locally, and there's an expectation of some significant job increases. So we're working on some of those issues behind the scenes. So I do think, overall, I think it's going to be a better year for jobs, a better year for the economy. I think our budgets will get the attention they need this year. We're still going to have tough days and tough questions, and what you can pay for and what you can't. But we've been putting things in place the last 3 years to try to make it where it's becoming easier. And so we're protecting the proration problem. We've been doing a great deal of consolidation of agencies. Law enforcement's a good example. We've consolidated, I think it was 20-something agencies into one law enforcement department with about 8 or 9 sub-departments. So we've consolidated tremendously in that area. In the IT area, we've done a great deal of consolidation. Department of Commerce and AIDT, the training side of it, we've been doing a lot of consolidation there, and we're seeing it pay off. We're seeing savings of millions of dollars. I think right now we're somewhere, depending on the numbers you look at, I think the low number was 750, the high is about 1.1 billion as to the annual savings that we've been able to generate through consolidation, through addressing budgeting questions, and just taking care of the business of the state. We've been able to make those type of annual savings per year. And we had to become leaner and meaner, and we said that in 2010 when some of us were running for office. I expected that, and I warned everybody. Y'all want a smaller government. You won't spend less. you're going to get what you ask for. But leaner and meaner in hard times is what makes us more efficient, makes us better. Businesses go through the same trends.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's been some talk about, businesses closing, in this area. Some small businesses have closed, and we're talking about the hospital. We just heard the Ansley's place just closed.
I don't think that's an economy issue. I think that's.
I think those are decisions. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's, people have to look at the big picture.
Right.
And the big picture is, it's not the economy, it's people, hey, I want to retire.
Right.
The guy down in Florella, the doctor that had the hospital, that was a financial decision.
Correct.
Okay, on his part.
Correct.
But what we're finding out, he didn't look into certain things that could have helped
Correct.
that situation better. He just threw the towel and said, I quit, and ran. But there's businesses in this community that are through, what is it called, fruition, okay? That it's going to happen, WK&I may not be here, 10 years from now. You don't know. Teresa and I can only carry it so far. Ansley's Place has served this community for a very, very long time.
20 years, yeah.
And you know what? She's got a new family now too, and she wants to live life, and kudos to her,
I agree.
And there's other people in the community that are that have closed or moved on to things, and that can't get confused with the economy that we have here. You got to look at a positive note that this community is growing, and I'm going to sit down. I'm going to get hold of John over at the city. I may even get with you and say, how many new businesses have come into this community in the past 5 years? And then do that on a state level, because we're seeing Hyundai, we're seeing Toyota, we're seeing all sorts of plants. Mobile just nailed it.
Statewide, we've seen in the last 3 years an increase of 40,000 to 50,000 new jobs statewide.
Yeah, Mobile just hammered it. Dothan is fixing to hammer it.
And these are high-paying jobs, really good jobs, and for the and we've been putting these things into place, trying to be more competitive with other states and with other areas, not just states, but other parts of the world. And we've been much more aggressive as a state in recruitment, and we're starting to see it pay off in a big way. And the good thing about these big super industries that are coming in, whether it be in Mobile or Huntsville, wherever, is that they almost always bring feeder plants, because industries that come in that are that big, that are hiring 2,000 and 3,000 people, they're going to need parts and pieces of the components they're constructing, and at some point it's cheaper to have them placed locally. And so what they'll do is, it's like a spider web. They'll spread them out around the area, and that's where cities our size tend to get these feeder plants, like the Hyundai suppliers like we have here, and that helps everybody. So Mobile getting that super industry coming in, that's great. But it's also great for us too, because we're not too far from them, and we're on a major highway system that allows us to transport very easily. So, for so many reasons, things are going the right direction. We're making those healthy steps. It's just a matter of
look at the highway between here and Interstate 65 now.
Right.
I mean, I call that the Seth Hemmett section, because I think he was pretty big on getting that going over there, but it's done. I rode it the other day. It was like, wow, it cut off 20 minutes of the trip.
They're doing a few little things on the sides of it, and they'll be about complete with that. But yes, it's about wrapped up finally. And but we just Highway 84 into Coffee County. We announced during the off season a $200+ million expansion of that to keep it going east, so that we continue to get that going across our state. So we're increasing the highway systems.
The infrastructure is so important.
The A-TRIP program that we put in place the last 2 years is bringing enormous amounts of investments into infrastructure all over the state. I think around here locally, it's somewhere around I think it's $20 to $25 million coming into this area on highway project and road projects all over.
The new bridges on 84 between here and Opp.
Correct. So we've got a lot of investments being made in infrastructure, and that's the point. If you invest your money wisely, where it's not just for political reasons, it's actually improving things that will bring more jobs, well then you're investing money, to make more jobs. And you cannot go wrong investing in your roads and bridges, because that's the transport routes. You cannot go wrong doing that.
Plus, just the work on those roads and bridges puts people to work.
Well, the secondary spin-offs that you're talking about, these other businesses coming in, this connector between us and I-65 right now, that's going to make us available to be part of that spin-off now because we've got access,
Correct.
straight in. So it's another artery to let things. And if you know anything about the human body, if you put blood vessels, things grow better.
That's right.
And that's what we're looking at here. Mike, I know you've got a lot, and I don't care how long we take, but there's a lot more going on at the state level. People are concerned, obviously. We talked about the health care. We've talked about some of the infrastructure and the businesses and the economy. The biggest thing I'll never forget, we were $150 million or whatever it was in debt when you took office or something like that.
Yeah, well, actually ended up being a little more than that, but
But it was a big number,
A
more
big
than
number.
is in my checking account. And today we're talking about, hey, we're doing business. We had to make some cuts. We had to tuck it in, and we're looking at a bigger legislature day, week coming up,
Right.
and things to get done. We're going to take a quick break because we give you time to breathe a little bit. But I want you to go ahead and we're going to focus on you about what you're bringing up. The gun law, okay, that's going to be tweaked, I'm assuming.
it may not be this year, it probably be the following year. I think there's still the desire to see how it's playing out a little bit better, let it have a little more time.
Has there been any real concern about the castle?
There's not been any major fallout, and that's what we wanted to see. If there were any major factual problems that showed themselves, there's still the concern about those things, and that's why you try to give it enough time to see if it actually ends up being what people fear it's going to be, or if it ends up helping. And so that's how I do think you'll see some tweaks that'll happen, not probably this session, but probably the following session. And by tweaks, just that, tweaks. There's been some things that we could make it better and make it more efficient, and that's always, when you create a law that big, you're going to have those kind of tweaks you'll see. And so those are expected, and we do see some of those things coming down the road.
Just so you know, too, in case you don't get everything out today here, we're going to be in Florella
Correct.
tomorrow night.
Correct.
And we'll videotape that and re-air that as well. But we want you to take the time this morning. It's important for our viewers to know what's going on. And
Before we go on for the break, and I'll say this another time after the break,
Right.
but I do want to say that we are going to have a town hall meeting. This is something that when I was running for office for the 2010 election, one of the things that I ran on, one of the two biggest issues I ran on was that I would have town hall meetings before each session and one after each session. The purpose of having the town hall meeting before each session was to let people have input on what occurs during the session and what their interests were, and let me get information. The purpose of having them after the session was basically to give us, what they thought, whether we did a good job or not, what we could do to be better. Basically to allow the people here to critique us and to critique the job that we did. And once again, that's to learn, that's to do better. And so we've honored that. I've honored that. We've had a town hall meeting before each session. In fact, even some of the special sessions, we've had town hall meetings before those, and we've had them afterwards. The town hall meeting is tomorrow night, Tuesday night, and it will be in Florella at the Rodney Evans Conference Center. That's the new meeting facility right next to Lake Jackson. It's at 6 o'clock, and it's a large facility. It'll hold, I think, up to 500 people. So
beautiful facility.
plenty of room, plenty of parking. But we want you to come. If you've got an interest, a concern, if you've got an idea, please come. And I've said this in the past. Some of the things that I've taken up to Montgomery and we've passed have come out of these meetings. And so I can't say enough. We listen. I usually bring a notebook to every one of these and take notes for a reason. Many times if it's an idea that I especially think is something we may can work on, I'll get your information, your phone number, and we'll talk more. And that's happened in the past. I hope it continues. So please come. We welcome the input. It's an open mic, and a lot of politicians don't like to do that. I love it. I learned so much from giving people a chance to have their say. And if they're critical, that's fine. That's part of the job, because I'm not perfect, and so criticism comes with it. So no matter what it is, if you want to be heard or if you've got input, we'd be glad to have you come. 6 o'clock tomorrow night, that's Tuesday night. in Florella at the Rodney Evans Conference Center, and that's on right there at the corner of Lake Jackson.
And Senator Hawley will be there as
Correct.
well. And we're going to try to get him on this week too. I'll corner him while I'm down there tomorrow, but he'll always, he's so much fun. It's such, we're so blessed to have you and Senator Hawley as our local representatives. You guys are awesome. We're going to take a quick commercial break, come on back, and we'll be back with our state representative, District 92, Mike Jones Jr., and thank you for coming on. Remember, folks, keep it real, keep God in it. We'll be back with more, if I'm still on, right after this. Hello and welcome back once again to WKNI TV 25. Good news, Covenant County, we're here with Representative Mike Jones Jr. And Mike, we've covered a lot, everything from Auburn, Florida State football to health care to roadways and infrastructure. Session's coming up on the 14th. What are you going to where are you headed to?
Well, this year it's my hope that we can, at least my plan is to try not to work as many of the bills that we normally, that I normally work. I've pre-filed 3 different bills. If you look on Allison, which is the website for looking at the bills that we bring up, it appears I have more than that. It's actually that I filed 2 bills early in the off season with the intent of letting the world read them and see them ahead of time so that we could work them before session. And so as we got closer to session, I have filed those same bills but tweaked versions of them, more addressed versions of them closer to session so that maybe we've got them close to where they need to be before we take them to a vote. There's one bill in particular that I've been working on. It's a part of the platform that the Republican Party is bringing this year. And it didn't start out as a platform bill. It started out as an idea I had in my head at the end of the last session. And we worked on it behind the scenes for months. And then I basically went to the speaker and went to some of the leadership and said, hey, I've been working on this idea. Here it is. Let me show it to you. What do you think? And over time, the Republican members of the House said, hey, we like this, let's put this on our platform. And what I was looking at is this. At the end of last session, one of the bills we addressed was liability insurance for education employees. And what we put into place was a $5 million policy for education employees that mirror imaged the same exact policy we have for state employees. And while we were taking up that bill, my thought was, well, why is this even a big deal? My memory is I thought that they already had immunity from things like that. Well, after the session ended, I met with one of the researchers that's with the Legislative Reference Services, and that's the research arm of the legislature. And we spent 2 months researching not only Alabama law, but also laws from other states in our region, and then eventually the laws from every state in the nation, looking at the immunity for different liability issues, civil issues for education employees and state employees here in this state. What we found out is that there's never been a law on the books for that. There's some language in our Constitution that implies a certain amount of immunity, but it doesn't seem to go all the way down to the teacher or to the bus driver or anything like that. And so with more research, we found out that we are now one of only a handful of states, by that I mean 3 to 5 states, that have never codified civil immunity for education employees.
Wow.
In the nation. And that surprised me. I mean, even California and even a lot of these other states that typically don't do those kind of things, they're a lot more tort-oriented or lawsuit-oriented, even they had passed laws on this stuff. So after doing a good bit of research, my belief is don't reinvent a wheel. Look at research what other people have done, other states have done, and then try to bring what fits our state in some language. We worked on and drafted a 3.5-page bill, very short. I kind of go to old school. You know me in the Constitution. If our founders could write a Constitution you could put in your pocket, then we should be able to write laws that don't take so many words. And so we tried to draw up a bill that anybody could read. Make it simple words, make it state it very clearly, and don't get too big with it, and then bring that to the table. I've sent a copy of this bill to the teachers union. I've sent it to the trial lawyers. I've sent it to the Superintendent Association, the Boards of Education Association, Dr. Pouncey, Dr. Bice with the Department of Education, the Governor's Office, sent it to the Senate, leadership, you name it. I've done my best to send this bill to everybody, anybody I could think of, inviting response, inviting, critiquing and what ways they might could see we could word it better or address it better. And so we've been doing that for months, probably about 6 months now. And from that, we've got a few, in fact, I'll have one last meeting this Friday afternoon in Montgomery, and then it should be ready to bring up the first week in session. But the whole point is this: if a teacher's doing their job, they should not be so worried about liability and spending so much time filling out documents to protect themselves from liability. They should be spending that time teaching.
Exactly.
And I got to thinking back when my mother first started teaching, and I got to tell you, my mother taught because she loved to teach, and I think that's true with most teachers. But it's become...
They sure didn't do it for the pay.
No. It's a calling. I mean, it really is. It's a calling. But today's education system, there's so much time spent on documentation and protecting things for liability reasons and procedural things that are put into place. And frankly, it takes away from teachers teaching, and it puts that fear in their minds of, well, what can they really do? And so part of my goal was this: if we're not able to pay as much, because we still probably will work on some sort of pay increase for education employees, but if we can't pay as much as we want to pay because we just don't have the money, then let's see if we can do other things that make life better and make teaching better. And so this is what hatched this as the idea. And so we've come up with this bill. It's been so far approved by the Attorney General's office as far as enforcing it. The Governor's office likes it. Senator Hawley has filed the matching bill in the Senate. I wanted to make sure we had good Senate leadership in this kind of thing as well. The Superintendent Association has endorsed it by letter. Dr. Pouncey and his office have recommended it. They actually had a couple of good word tweaks, and we added that to it. And we're still meeting with a couple of other agencies to make sure they're good. The State Employees Association, we're meeting with them as well. And so my goal was this: I didn't want there to be any surprises. I wanted this thing to be well vetted before we started. And so I've worked for months vetting this bill behind the scenes. But the goal is to let teachers teach, let them do their jobs without fear of individual liability, or if they're doing their jobs as they're supposed to, without professional liability. And that's the goal of it, and put it into a law that's clear and precise, and that's it.
This isn't going to keep them if they do something
Correct.
wrong,
No, if they normal stuff. If they commit a crime, no, it does not make anything immune whatsoever. In fact, it's only civil immunity. It has no impact on any kind of criminal act whatsoever. And even in civil immunity, if it's an intentional, all the different words you normally use to describe it, if it's obviously a bad faith action, then it's not going to be protected. But if it's within the normal course of their duties and their job descriptions and what they're always doing, even their discretionary duties, then it should be covered. I mean, they shouldn't be afraid of those things. But if it's a teacher that sexually abused a child, no, there's no immunity for that. That's not within their line and scope of their duties. A good example also is this would apply to bus drivers.
I was going to ask, yeah.
It would apply to non-certified employees as well. And the example I've used to try to show where it would apply and where it wouldn't, if you've got a bus driver that's doing their job, his or her job, and let's say there's an allegation that you verbally said something to my child that you shouldn't have said. Well, if it was the bus driver disciplining the child for safety reasons, as they're empowered to do, then the bus driver should not be subject to civil lawsuit.
Right.
But if the bus driver's drinking and driving a bus with students, clearly that's outside the line and scope of his duties and his or her duties, and he should be held responsible for it. So it's common sense. We're not trying to get away from common sense, but we are trying to give, once again, common sense to liability. They should not be sued for doing their jobs.
Real quick,
Yeah.
Your area expanded, your district expanded this
Yes.
year. You encompassed some of Coffee County and
Took in about a quarter of Coffee County, the Kinston and Ino areas. A little bit further north on the western side of Coffee County, but not quite into Elba. We also took another big hunk of Escambia County. geographically, District 92 will be all of Covington County, almost half of Escambia County, and about a quarter of Coffee County.
How's that affecting your office?
I think it's great. It's a great fit. We're already representing part of Escambia County. The part of Coffee County, you couldn't ask for a better fit. I mean,
Oh, yeah, that's,
you know,
I know most of my friends are over in that area.
I was going to say, we go to church, we work with them, you know, it's the same people we see every day. So really there's almost no transition there. It's a perfect fit. I've already met and had a town hall meeting in Kinston. Did that right after we came out of session this past year. Because I didn't want to wait till election time. I wanted to show people in Coffee County that this is how I work. I believe in meetings. I believe in learning and getting information and input from the people I represent. And I make myself available as much as I can. And one thing I want to say, and a benefit you mentioned earlier before the break, we have a senator that works with me and with this district that he has never missed one town hall meeting, no matter how big or how small. He's not missed one for District 92. Mm-hmm. Every town hall meeting that I've said, Senator Hawley has come to the meetings and participated. And that is not the norm. I'm here to tell you, if you ask people you know across the state about access to their elected leadership at the state level, you will not see near the type of response that we have here. And the other great thing is that Senator Hawley and I have such a great working relationship. And that's another thing that's not normal. If you were to go and just observe, you'd see that it's a lot easier to get things done for your district if your senator and your representative work well together. If you don't have a good working relationship, it's virtually impossible to get anything done. And that's one of the blessings that we have here is Senator Hawley, he and I work so well together, and it's made it very helpful for this district. And I can't say enough good things about him. He's done a great job.
Well, and not to blow your balloon up or anything, but Senator Hawley worked well with the Democrat as well.
Right.
I mean, he has no partisanship when it comes to this community. He's very deviled in making sure what's right for the community.
And that's one reason we see eye to eye. We don't let the political lines prevent us from doing a good job. I've worked with many Democrats as well as Senator Hawley. Because many times it's not about political lines. It's about what's right and what's wrong. And if you try to make it too complicated, it gets complicated. But if you keep it simple and just say, is this helping the district? Then this is what you should do.
A lot of times you talk to elected officials, and especially with what we do here, you don't hear the political side come out about the party or anything. I usually bring it out. And, when they're making decisions, the majority of the time, they're making decisions on how it's going to affect their area and not worried about party, platforms. Right. And, I got to say, you and Senator Hawley follow that very closely. Mike, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming on. We're going to follow you down tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, City of Florella, on the lake at Lake Jackson at, what do they call it?
Rodney Evans Conference Center.
You can't miss it. It's right there on the corner, right across from the Huddle House. And I think Mike said he's providing ribs and barbecue. No.
No? No.
Oh, wait a minute. I misunderstood something.
No. Senator Hawley will be there with me. We'll bring the large maps of the district. So people still are having questions about the district lines, right. And so I continue to bring those maps. But it is an open mic. And by that I mean, if you've got a question or if you've got input, by all means come. We have never shut a meeting down until everybody had a chance to talk.
I know that's right.
So, so sometimes
we run out of tape.
Sometimes they're short meetings, sometimes they're very long meetings,
right.
But we don't dictate the time. We let the people that come to our meetings dictate the time that we spend.
Well, Mike, you're doing such a great job up there. We thank you. Before we head on out of here, we know it's an election year. Okay, any trembling in the vines out there?
I don't know. I'm running for the office. I want to work again for the district. I think I've worked these past 3 years to such a point that I'm hopeful that I can step up maybe into leadership the next quadrennium. And the higher you go into leadership, the more you can do for your district. And that we learned that from Seth. Is if you get to those higher positions, you really can do a lot more for your district. And that's my goal. I've worked very hard and tried to do a very good job. But I'm a workaholic. I'm obsessive compulsive. That kind of plays into that some. But But I don't mind spending the long hours. I've done it, and I'll continue to do it because I think you can do a better job if you put in the time than if you don't.
Well, Mike, the only person that I would support outside of here for your position, okay, and I think she would do a wonderful job, would be Sue. And if she announced she was running for office, we'd have to stand behind her.
Sue has been with me for 22 years now, I believe.
She'd make a good representative, folks. I'm just saying.
Sue, she's practically my sister.
She's a sweetheart. She really is.
We've worked together for so long. She knows what I'm thinking all the time, and
You gonna go over there and tell her, say, Eddie's trying to get you to run for office.
no, she does. She does a great job.
She really does. And folks, if you try to get up with Mike, you're going to probably talk to Sue. She does get the messages through to Mike. You can email Mike. You can call over there at 222.
0111 is the office number.
Okay, 0111. Ask for Sue, and she's not busy. She's going to tell you the email address, everything that you can get hold of Mike on. And he does return phone calls.
Now I'll tell you, and I do, but people probably don't realize the quantity that we get. Some days on a normal day, I'll have anywhere from 50 to 75 or 100 emails. On large days, and especially when we're in session, it can be 150, 200 emails. It's a lot of communications that come through to us, and then I may get 50 to 75 phone calls a day. If I spend even 2 to 5 minutes on one phone call, returning that many calls, it takes time. So do give some patience. I do return calls. I carry usually wads of them in my pocket, so when I'm driving or walking, whatever, I'm usually on a phone call. My office thinks I've got it glued to my head. But I called.
I was going to get you one of those ones that you hoop over and the phone sits right here.
I call as much as I possibly can. It's just that like everything else, you just run out of time, and I'll just keep calling. So sometimes it does take me longer than I want, but it's because it's only one of me, and I do the best I can.
Well, you're doing an awesome job. We appreciate you, Mike, and appreciate you coming on.
Yes, sir.
90 minutes, folks. That's why he doesn't return phone calls right away. He talks and gets things thoroughly explained, so you're not left with a question. If you do have a question or you want us to talk to Mike or ask him a question when he comes on, he will be back on again, I'm sure. Just ask us. We'll be more than happy. Mike knows I do that, and we're actually going to have the phone lines hooked up here because if there's anybody running for office, we're going to have the debates in here as well. Again, we're known for setting the televised debates up, and we'll continue to do so. Mike, we wish you the best. God bless you. Be safe. Give that wonderful family of yours a hug from us.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2014, and War Eagle. I'm here in Alabama, it's War Eagle. If I cross the line, it's go FSU. But thanks for coming on. Folks, remember, keep it real, keep God in it. Welcome to 2014.